Good morning, everyone. Today it's just me. Now, in the future, as I've always been trying to do, I'm trying to get a lot of guests come on the podcast. But once in a while, I might just hop in and do a solo podcast. And the goal with these is to kind of just go through some of my own recent learnings in life. Maybe, I don't know, on a weekly basis and a monthly basis. I don't know how frequently I'm going to do these solo podcasts, but anyways, I think I need practice just speaking, just being better on camera and on the mic. So I'm gonna leverage any free time I get to do these solo podcasts where I'm gonna go through and just share as many of my learnings as possible in my recent um couple weeks of my life. Now today I have a list of 16 things that I want to go through. So it's a mix of 10 things that I learned from my own experience over the last week, and then six more things that I learned from just reading and through other podcasts. And I want to combine all these together into one solo podcast that kind of jumps around these many different themes. Now, so that is learnings, a lot of them from my own life and things that I find interesting. They're usually going to fit together in a specific theme. And the title of the video and the description can kind of help you get an idea of the kind of topics we're going to talk about today. I might even add a clip that summarizes everything at the end, so that could be helpful to you. But anyways, let's run today. I don't know how long this will take. Maybe we'll go for like an hour, maybe more. But let's see. Let's start kicking through, getting to it. So the first thing that I have here on my list of 10 things that I learned from just pure experience. So just going about living my life and things I'm learning. The first thing is not feeling guilt for being quiet because the world is a noisy place. So I think as people, there is some middle ground that we can find where we have a perfect balance of being quiet and being noisy. All right. I mean, seems kind of straightforward that if you're just talking to people and you're kind of in this normal state of mind where you're not too quiet of a person, but not too noisy of a person. But most of us do not sit in this middle region, and a lot of us tend to lean towards more of a quiet side or a noisy side, right? You can think of people in your own life, people that might be very quiet, who don't say a lot, people who might be very noisy, who keep saying a lot, right? And people tend to shift from on either side of the spectrum. People who might be a little bit more noisy, those of them who are conscious about it might be like, okay, I don't want to be talking as much as I am and try to control that. People who might be very quiet might be like, I wish I can talk more in social settings, but it's just in our natural state of being that we fall into these zones, right? So although it hasn't been something that bothered me a lot, but I kind of leaned more toward the quiet side, where obviously if I'm with people that I really enjoy being around, I'm not going to be quiet. But if you just put me in like a random group of people that are just talking about some random shit, like I probably wouldn't want to contribute or talk about whatever they're talking about, right? So I tend to lean more in these like scenarios toward the quiet side. And although it never bothered me, there was a slight sense of guilt associated with it. That once in a while you're sitting with people, you're like, they're talking about something that you don't really care about. And so some sense of guilt that you're not contributing to it, you're not saying anything, and maybe how they perceive you because of that. But I think recently what I learned this week is that it's okay to be on that quiet side. And the reason why I say that is because I think it's better to be on the quiet side than the noisy side. And the reason I say that is because you can think about people that just talk a lot and they make so much noise, and to a degree that can get annoying. And people that are just saying stuff and saying stuff and saying stuff, like it doesn't really add much value. And I guess what I realized was you don't have to say things for the sake of saying things. Like if you have nothing to say, then don't say it. I think the world that we live in is a very noisy place to begin with, and that's not even necessarily our fault, but even just the way the world is today. If you look at like news marketing agencies, if you look at all the commercials and TV and social media you're getting, there's so much noise going through your mind already. There's so much shit you're thinking about already that it's okay if you're not contributing to that noise just for the sake of it, right? Like people are making random jokes and you don't really care. Like you don't have to feel guilty for not wanting to contribute to that, because at the end of the day, it's just contributing noise. So, it's if you lean toward that quiet side, it's actually kind of a good thing because you're saving the words you say. Just if you lean toward that quiet side, more of what you say will be valuable, and you'll be contributing less to that noise of this noisy world, because that kind of be a negative thing. Because I heard about this concept called death by a thousand cuts, which is a little bit different, but it's basically the idea that you do little things in the day that are slowly like killing you in the long run. So it's not like one big thing that's killing you, but these small little things you do that keeps affecting like, your mental state of being. Like, okay, I pick up my phone, that's one cut. Then I um listen to music, that's another cut. Then I watch a movie, that's another cut. So these small things throughout the day that are kind of killing your mental state of being, which adds up to this whole thing. But I think that can also apply to like other things as well. And already with all these thousands and thousands of cuts that are coming in and affecting your state of being, you don't have to contribute to that by creating more noise. But then I thought about it, that why do people create so much noise in this world, right? You can think there are a few people that I can think of in my life that can't stop talking. And if there's nothing to talk about and no one to talk about, they'll just make random noise. Like I remember someone just came in the locker room the other day and he was just like making random sounds like ee. I'm like, and someone just looks at him and says, "Why are you making so much sound?" And that really got me thinking, like, why do people create so much noise? And as I was going on a walk, I started drawing parallels between this concept of noise and this concept of, you know, hiding from negative thoughts, because I feel like that as a thing is something a lot of people deal with, like negative thoughts and finding ways to hide from that. And earlier on, I've talked about, which I might get more into like in later in this video, but this idea that when you don't like who you are, you'll find ways to hide from that. And for me, although it wasn't, I was hiding of it from it through noise, I might have been hiding from it through artificial relationships, right? When you hate who you are, you try to find as many artificial ways to cover it up, whether it's like spending all your time scrolling on social media so you don't have to deal with those negative thoughts, or you spend all your time socializing with people so you can kind of pretend that you don't have those negative thoughts. People find ways to hide from that when they really hate who they are. And while for me, it might have been chasing artificial relationships to hide from those negative thoughts, I think for a lot of people, they can use noise to hide from those negative thoughts, right? Because here's the thing, if you're talking to someone, you don't have to listen to that inner critic that's constantly telling you you're a piece of shit. And if there's nothing to be said and there's no one around, just making noise can hide from the fact that you have those negative thoughts in the background. So it really showed me that a lot of people are insecure, as I've been in the past as well. And one of the reasons why people make so much noise in this world is just because they're trying to hide from the fact that they hate who they are. But, I don't want to go into too much of that story as well because I've talked about it before. And I think the main theme here is that it's okay to be on the quiet side because you don't have to contribute to this noise that's perpetuating in the world that we live in. So next, I want to talk about this concept of identity shifts, right? So what I was thinking before is that some people in life make bad decisions. And often those bad decisions can cause you to dig yourself in a hole. And sometimes you just keep making bad decision after bad decision and makes the world kind of hate you in some way. Now, for a lot of people, they find themselves in those holes and they get stuck there. And I was wondering, why is it that some people keep making mistakes, and not learning from them and getting stuck in that hole instead of conceptualizing it and like learning from it, improving and getting better, right? Now, I'm fortunate to think that when I look back at my own life and the mistakes that I've made, I feel like I've been quite conscious about those mistakes and self-reflective about them that have reached me to a point where like I've overcame them and find so much happiness in the afterward period of that. But my question is like, why did some people not recover from mistakes? Why is it that when they make those mistakes, they start coping and hiding from the fact that they made those mistakes and they keep going deeper and deeper and deeper until they don't come out? We can all think of those people who make some big mistake and then they just keep going and keep going and keep going. And we look at them like, why are they doing that? Right. So it's basically the idea of like getting canceled, but how do you recover from that? And I realized that the one reason why maybe I was able to recover from that was just an identity shift. So what I think of as a concept of an identity shift is basically when you change the way you see yourself as a person. A lot of people, when they make mistakes, they don't change the way they see themselves. When they try to fix those mistakes, they still see themselves as the person who made that mistake. But, you know, I think we're constantly trying to tell ourselves some kind of story. We're constantly trying to justify to ourselves that we're important in some way. And we're kind of telling ourselves that this is who we are in this context or whatever. And I think the story that you tell yourself about who you are, that identity that you build about yourself in your mind can play a huge role in whether you recover from mistakes and learn from them, or whether you use your mistakes to keep digging yourself in that hole and never recover from those mistakes. So when I look at like one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in my life, and I won't really call it a mistake because it's not like a single decision that I made, but it's more that it was a combination of factors that led me toward living a certain kind of life. And again, the reason I led on that kind of life is because of the identity that I was obsessed with trying to build and that persona that I was trying to build. But really one, I came out of that zone and I realized that what I might have been doing was kind of counterproductive and wasn't actually helping me find fulfillment. Then I started to think backward and I immediately saw a new identity for what I wanted to see myself as, right? Instead of wanting to see myself as some desperate boy that's trying to just chase this persona, chase these friends, chase these girls or whatever I was chasing at the time, immediately like my mind shifted in the next few weeks and I wanted to see myself as more of an honorable person. I wanted to see myself as a person of good character, a person that deserve respect, person that the world could respect, right? Obviously, like I'm not going around and telling people these things, but inside my mind, these are the sort of thoughts I'm starting to get that I want to be a more respected person. And I saw myself like, what does a respected person do? And I think really when you're recovering from a place where you made a bad decision, that identity shift is very important. You really need to sit back and think about who is the person I really want to become. And then when you internalize that identity, then you start to ask yourself, well, if I was this person, then what would I actually be doing? Right. So when I thought about myself, okay, if I want to be a person who is respected and deserves respect, then I have to do what people who deserve respect do. And that could include like disciplining yourself. That can include waking up early every single day and not missing a single day. That can include like quitting all bad habits, like deleting social media. That could include pushing yourself and working hard. These are the kind of things that I thought, okay, if I do these things, then I can formulate that identity. But the key thing is I didn't start doing these things until my identity shifted. Like I already started seeing myself in this way even before it became a reality. And I think that is a key difference that it made, that a lot of people are trying to become this other person, but they still see themselves as the person that was the old version of themselves, right? The version of themselves that was chasing others' validation, the version of themselves that was doing bad habits and like wasting their time. So if you constantly see yourself in that way, but trying to achieve this person, it's never going to feel like you because you haven't first internalized it, right? But luckily for me, like I think because like the books I was reading at the time, the videos I was watching, it all kind of internalized in my mind. And I feel like I formed that identity even before it became a reality, right? But anyways, I'm seeing myself in this way that I'm telling myself I am a respected person. I am an honorable person. I am a person of good character. And then when I kept telling myself that thing, slowly my actions started to reflect that, right? So I'm doing like hard things like whatever, cold showers and like meditating and like going out wrestling hard, whatever, right? I'm doing things that a respected and honorable person would do. Like I'm waking up at 5:30, whatever. And as you do those actions, it kind of comes full cycle that it proves to you that yes, I'd see I did the thing, so I must be this thing. So it's like a positive feedback loop where you told yourself, I am this, you did the actions that the person would do, and the actions prove to you that you are this. And that positive feedback cycle keep going until you keep disciplining yourself, you keep formulating that identity. So really the key idea here is the identity shift, right? If you ever like make a big mistake in life or you ever want to shift like the person you are, it's really important to fully internalize and formulate that identity even before you go on to like become that person, right? Because I would say that when I first formed the identity, I didn't even have like many of the qualities that that person would possess. But they definitely started building up and with time. And I think now 7, 8 months later, like I would like to say that I pretty much formed that I whether people are not recognize it or not, it's more like internally that I see myself in that way. And I feel as if, yes, like that is the person I have become. So anytime you want to make change in your life, anytime you're trying to reach a certain endpoint, an identity shift is essential for changing the way you see yourself as a person. Now, another something building off of the identity shift piece, it's kind of similar, but in a little bit of a different context on a smaller scale. And it's related to a identity shift I felt through wrestling. Now, when I started wrestling my sophomore year, I always felt like I was kind of one of the worst on the team. Like I was kind of a new guy. I'm trying to figure everything out. I don't really know what's happening, right? My sophomore year. And because of that, when I approached my practices, I always saw them in that way that, oh, it's like all these guys around me who are so much better than me and have pushed so much harder than me. It's going to be so much harder for me because they have that experience, right? And although it wasn't the forefront of my mind, in the back of my mind, I'm going through practice, I tell myself like this shit is hard. And because I kept telling myself that this is hard, it really was hard in my mind because I would see that I'm doing the same practice that these senior captains and these really good wrestlers are doing, right? So in my mind, wrestling was always associated as this very hard thing. And that was true for my sophomore year and most of my junior year. But the thing is, like, in when I came out of my junior year, I did spend a lot of time resting in the off season. So I was going to like club in the spring term like twice a week. I was going and resting a lot. I was pushing myself hard because I did something that was so much harder than the thing itself. When I came back and looked back at petty wrestling practices, I almost saw them as below me, right? What felt before as this big grand thing, all of a sudden felt as a small thing, right? And then when you look around the room and now you're the senior captain and not captain, but you're a senior on the team and you see everyone around you who is new and a freshman, although the practices might be hard, in your mind, it feels like it's so much easier, right? Because you always just tell yourself, I've done worse. And you tell yourself that if they can do it, I can do it. And because of that, when I came back, although people might be saying that the practices felt so hard, and they might have been pretty hard, like there were some pretty tough conditioning, in my mind, it didn't feel as difficult. So really the learning that I got from here is one, there's an identity shift piece of it that I no longer see myself as a smaller wrestler that's coming in and learning. I see myself as more of the experienced wrestler who's pushed himself, who's advanced, who can work hard. But also that your perception of or how difficult something feels is primarily a reflection of what your mind tells you about it, right? Your mind is a very much a limiting force because it holds you back, and your perception of it dictates how hard it is because the practices are the same last year and this year. And you know what? So sure, with the experience, I might have gotten better at it, but I think so much of it is a mental piece of it. So much of it is what you tell yourself about it, the story you tell yourself about it. So although practices could be hard and everything. And although I might have improved with time, I think a big piece of why the practices and everything has shifted in my life is just because of A, the way I see myself, and B, the way I see the practices. Because if the practices, I see them in like a lesser light, it's easier for me to overcome those fears and just go out and do it, and it feels so much easier. So again, I think the takeaway from there is like number one, you can leverage activities that are much harder than the thing itself to improve at them and get better at them. And number two, everything is a mental game. So if you can control the beliefs in your mind, then those beliefs can be a reflection of what actually happens in the real world. So it's something pretty interesting to keep in mind. So I really like this next one. So we're on the fourth learning, and it's about this concept of character versus reputation. So again, we all make mistakes in life. And I think recently I did make a mistake myself where you may accidentally say something or you make some kind of joke or you say something pretty mean that really does end up affecting someone. You can end up losing that entire relationship because of one thing that you said, right? And when I did end up saying that thing and I lost a relationship because of it, it did make me feel pretty bad. It made me look at myself like, how can I say something like that? It made me look at like, is that really who I am? But then I thought to myself that, okay, that joke that I might have had in my mind, although I had it in my mind for maybe months and months and months before that, it never affected me until I said it out loud. And that kind of made me think that we don't actually care about who we are as people. We don't actually care about our real character. We care about our reputation. The fact is that you can be thinking about fucked up jokes and shit all the time in your mind, but it isn't until you say it out loud that it really bothers you, you know? Which is very interesting to think about because although we like to think that we do a lot of things for ourselves, we do a lot of things because we're good people and we want to be happy and be good for other people. I believe a large part of what dictates what we do is just others' approval and others' validation. And there's ways you can free yourself from that. Obviously, like being conscious about it itself can help you free yourself from that. But at the end of the day, like a mistake doesn't feel bad until others recognize the mistake. If you fail in silence, it doesn't affect you that much. But when you fail with people watching you around you, then it actually like fucks with your mind and your identity, right? Because it didn't affect me until I saw his reaction of it. Because now all of a sudden it's not a thought in my mind. Now it's something I said out loud. He's recognized it. He made me feel like shit because I made him feel like shit. And because of that, you look at yourself differently. So really, what I thought about after that is that it shouldn't bother me as much as it did because it's simply a reputation that has it's simply a reputation that's bothering me, not my genuine character. So I thought to myself, okay, what is my genuine character? And then I learned from that and I improved my genuine character. But at the end of the day, that reputation piece kept bothering me. But you know, when you look at mistakes in life, they're inevitable, and you're gonna make them, and you're gonna say stupid shit, and you're gonna get people mad at you and angry at you that might look at you differently. But I think the biggest thing is that when you make a mistake, don't let it affect who you are as a person. I think you should learn from it, but you should always recognize that your mind will tend to care more about reputation than character, than true character. Because that's just how we're evolved to live, right? I think a lot of what's unique about humans is that for us to survive in the jungle, we need other people to like us. Other species, not as much, but for humans, our strength is our strength in numbers. And that's always been our strength in our evolutionary history. And because of that, we've developed these neural circuits in our mind that are just care so much about what other people think. And the second we say something, not only will it bother us that the other person doesn't like us, but we'll always look at ourselves in that negative way. So just remember to keep this idea in mind that you care more about your reputation than you do your character. So, you know, I'm pretty lucky that I have a metabolism that in which I can eat a lot of food and not gain too much weight, which obviously I don't want to say lucky right now because I've wanted to gain weight and, you know, I can still gain weight, but it takes a lot longer and a lot more time. Um, I think that's true for a lot of young people that you can kind of eat anything and get away with it. And you know, there's a couple of different things I wanted to talk about with food today. So one, how I feel myself for the state of your mind, and two, overeating problems in the future. So we'll start with the second one. So we had weight certifications like a week or two ago. And when I was over there in weight certification, I had to drop a little bit of weight. And it's really the first time I've dropped weight in a long time. So I kind of forgot what it feels like. I think the last time I really controlled my diet in terms of the quantity of the food I ate was probably like last season, right? Which is a while back. And I think I was pretty close to the weight anyways. But yeah, anyways, I'm like a couple, like I'm not even that much over. Like I'm 123. I want to cut down to like 121. And it was just like a day or two before I tell myself, okay, I'll just like eat less. Like normally I eat a lot of food with no guilt associated with it. I mean, obviously I don't want to eat too much because then I'll just get like lazy and shit. But often I can eat like 3, 4, 5 plates in the dining hall without feeling much guilt because I'm not gaining any weight and I want to gain weight anyway. So it's good for me to stay on that level. But I realized how hard it was for me to just control myself from not just indulging, like at breakfast, just eating like 3 plates of eggs and potatoes. Like I had to limit myself to just like one. And I felt like that was difficult and I was hungry and I want to just indulge and eat a lot, which made me think that, you know, at some point my metabolism will break, right? It's not going to last this way forever. So it's something to keep in mind that you, okay, while you're a kid and you can indulge and eat as much as you want and not see the effects of it, just always keep in the back of your mind that at someday you're gonna have to discipline your diet and eat less. And you should always incorporate at least some periods in your life. I think wrestling season does a good job for me for that, where you kind of limit yourself to eating less just to remember what it feels like. Because at the end of the day, that is a skill you'll need to develop later about controlling the amount you eat. Because I know that for someone who eats as much as I do, when the metabolism breaks, I'm just gonna get fat, right? And you don't want that to happen. So just keeping in mind that yes, if you're young and you want to eat a lot, go for it. But just keep in mind that these are like your body will change over time. You want to keep these kind of things in mind. And the secondly, like when we think about diet, I believe a lot of us think that diet is directly correlated with like our body and how our body is shaped. Or people think about, oh yeah, when they think about diet, they're either thinking about I want to be healthy, or they're thinking about I want to be bigger, or they're thinking about I want to be skinnier, or they're not thinking about anything at all with their diet, right? So mainly their vision with diet is restricted to their health and their body. But I haven't seen a lot of people talk about the effects of food on your mind. And some of you might know that you get like a huge energy drop in the evening. After you eat that big lunch meal, you eat a lot of food, you eat a lot of carbs, your energy level just dips significantly, right? Which is why that it's not only the quantity of the food you eat, but also the type of food you eat. If you're eating a lot of sugary processed food, like it doesn't make your mind feel great, feel like great afterwards. And if you're doing it consistently, where like you're eating a bowl of cereal every morning, like Lucky Charms every morning, or eating like waffles or whatever, like you kind of get used to it over time. But I think making that change, going and just eliminating the processed food for a while, you'll notice that your mental state of being is so much better. Now, you know, when I was over the summer, I was very easily able to control the amount of sugar and processed food I ate. And this is just because I wanted to go quite extreme with like I want like optimal health and longevity. I don't want to eat any sugar. that's added, like processed sugar and all that shit. I just want to eat like naturally home cooked food that my mom makes or whatever. And it's pretty easy over the summer. I think I had like 1 gram of added sugar a day and like whole wheat bread or something like that. But for the most part, I was able to do a pretty good job. But when I got back to petty, it was hard for me with breakfast, right? Because I had eggs and potatoes there for sure. But then I'd always tell myself, oh, you have to eat more. So I'd put like a pancake on the plate or I'd put like a waffle on the plate. And really, I was just coping. But I know for a fact that you don't actually need to eat all that. But I couldn't help but feel that after I ate like the pancake or whatever, or the muffin, my mind just did not feel good in like the first few hours of the day. Like I just felt like shit, considering I just came off of a summer where I ate like nothing processed, nothing sugary at all, like completely zero. So although I was kind of like getting like just lying to myself, saying, "Oh yeah, you have to do it, you have to do it." And like the first 2 weeks of school, I just did that. I think after a while, I decided like let's just cut it out, right? And I started just going to eggs and potatoes and just trying to keep it like clean, like no processed food. And all of a sudden, my mindset went back to that optimal state of being, right? Now you have to know what your priorities are, and I think right now I'm in this wrestling season, so I don't have to worry too much about gaining weight or anything. But what I do when the wrestling season is over this year and I dedicate maybe the next 1 or 2 years of my life to just putting on muscle, sure, you might want to eat like bigger quantities of food and more food. And, I still don't think I'll add sugar and stuff, but you still want, you have to know what your goals are at the time. But I think right now I care so much more about my mental state of being in the day. And it's very clear difference that when you're just going about your day, going to class, doing your work, your mental state of being and like the amount of brain fog you feel and the amount of tiredness and laziness you feel is so correlated with what you eat, which is why if you just discipline yourself to eating less of this shitty food, you can get your work done so much faster, you can have more free time, and you just feel better throughout the day. So yep, so those are the two key things that I've learned about diet more recently. That one, you want to make sure that you are watchful for that future problem that you might face with overeating. And number two, how the importance of diet not only for your health and your body, but also for your brain. So the next lesson is that people are more likely to say yes than no than you think. Um, so I run the podcast, and right now I've been kind of just having fun with it and just getting it started. I mean, I've literally like not even I just got like proper equipment today with the mic and everything, but before I was literally using the phone cameras and the we would just like come on, I would have no plans, we just talk about whatever. So it's not really organized, but I'm kind of having fun with it. But I do want to grow up with time, and I want to start getting like more distinguished guests on there and have more structure to it and start getting followers on there. Although it's not a primary concern, it will be a concern over time as I want to make money off of it in the future. I thought to myself, like, okay, I want to get more guests than just my friends, right? I want to find like actual people who I can talk to and learn from. And really, you have to take advantage of the opportunities you have around you, because you will always have opportunities around you. You'll always, if you just look around and try to leverage what you have in your environment, there's a lot more than you think there is. And I thought that's true for myself as well. So we had this last week, at least the week before exam week. So the 1 week, the last week of school we had in fall term, we had a Olympic wrestler who came and helped us with our practice for like the second or third day of practice. He came in and just kind of just teaching like everyone the basics and everything. And I thought, you know what, it'd be cool to have him on the podcast. So I went and asked him, and to our surprise, he said yes. And then the same week on Friday, we had a Navy SEAL come and give a speech to our high school, and I decided to stay after and ask him to come on the podcast, and he said yes. So really, the key learning I had in this is that normally in the past I would have so much fear associated with it, like, oh, you'll probably say no, like, I have no followers yet, like why would he come on? But then it's really just about feeling through that fear and just saying that, you know what, people are more likely to say yes than you think. And just going up to them and taking the chance is like, take the shot, right? Because you can land these like big names on your podcast and or whatever you're trying to do, right? Whatever the fear might be that you have. My learning was that in 1 week I just asked two distinguished guests and they both said yes. And in the future I want to start doing more cold outreach, and I might be reaching out to like a lot more people that I don't know. And for those people, the response rate might be less, but still, like, just keep going at it and feeling through those moments of self-doubt and just going out and doing it anyways. So this is a real quick one, so I just want to touch on this for like a minute or two. A lot of people, so we are quite unique individuals, and I do believe that. And for a long time, I felt that there was no one in my life who really understood me fully, right? There's no one who really understood like why I do what I do. There's no one who had like similar values to me and saw the world in my way. And that's at least what I thought. I thought that I was so unique, like no one must be like doing the things that I do. And a lot of people might think that way, right? I mean, you might be different. You might be in an environment where you have so many people around you who you can relate to and you can be like, but considering maybe you've watched like this much of the video, you might be someone who leans toward a side where you feel as if there might be one or two people, but there might not be a lot of people that fully get you. There might not be a lot of people that really understand you. And that was true for me as well. But I'd say like in the last few weeks, I started the podcast and I started to actually dig through people. I became less self-centered and I became more curious about them, right? As I was learning about like how to be like good on the podcast and how to make these videos very good, there were a couple of things I kept in mind. Like one was that I wanted to make sure that um I was trying to implement like all the skills I learned from social interactions. And one of the key ones is just be genuinely curious about other people because by nature we tend to be very self-centered. But just being curious about them and learning about them instead of caring about what I felt or what I thought, you start to realize as you dig through their life, as I have done on like these hour-long podcasts with people, you start to learn that there's so much more to them than you just see at the first glance. And I learned that, okay, well, this guy's kind of similar to me in this way, and this guy's similar to me in this way, and this guy's similar to me in this way. So it's really just about being genuinely curious about other people to figure out that there's actually people in your life that you might be able to relate to. But even that, like, if you just keep digging and you keep being social and you keep pursuing the activities that bring you the most joy, usually like when you're pursuing an activity that brings you joy, it will bring you to people who have a similar mind to you. And I recently found someone who, I'd say it's hard to find people that are straight up. And I think a lot of people can relate with that idea. But I found this one guy who was extremely straight up, and somehow everything that he's doing in his life kind of aligned with mine. And it was like a wow kind of moment that, okay, but he also wakes up at 5:30 every day. Like that's super cool. He also loves taking cold showers. He also loves like not listening to music and all these different things. And he also wrestles. And to me, my mind was like, wow, I didn't know like someone who was almost exactly like me exists, who had like similar like values to me. Like he just loves being outside and the outdoors. And obviously you don't want to only be friends with people who are exactly like you, but it's helpful to find people who have similar values to you because they can help keep you accountable. They can give you new ideas of things you can do and they can help you in your growth. So, I didn't feel this way for like a lot of the year, I'd say from maybe February to September. So it's a long stretch where I didn't feel as if there's anyone who really got me, who really understood me. But, being genuinely curious about other people and having the podcast helps a lot because it gives me an hour or hour and a half space where I can just naturally be curious about other people. You start to learn the connections you have with other people. You start to learn that there's more people like you in this world than you really thought. So a little bit of context into the next one. So we'll build up to it and I'll get to the main point. I've been trying to, in the last month or two of my life, trying to optimize like the amount of time it takes to get my work done. And I've done a bunch of shit that I've talked about before. But you know, one of the things I'll do is like, okay, I have to watch this movie for this class. I just watched at 2 times speed. Like it's a small thing I did. And I kind of just like was powering through it. Like I woke up early in the morning and everything, and I'm just like playing the movie at 2 times speed, just running through it, just answering the questions, right? And by the time the movie ended, like I finished it over a 2-day period, I thought to myself, like, that was a really good movie and I really enjoyed it. And it was for French class. So it was, I enjoy learning French. Like, I low key find it a lot of fun. And, like watching a movie in French, seeing them do it, it's a really like enjoyable, like learning experience for you, just seeing like how your mind works and understands these different languages. And I really thought the movie was great, but I kind of ruined the experience for myself. I kind of ruined it because I treated it like an assignment. I treated it like something that needed to just get done. And because I treated it like an assignment, I just like played it at 2 times speed and trying to extract all the details so I can answer the questions. And I didn't feel like I learned as much as I could if I just sat back and watched the movie for the pure enjoyment of it and for the pure like just learning from like the languages and everything. And that kind of allowed me to think. I feel like I've known about this before, but this experience helped to reiterate it for me that when you treat things like assignments, you learn less from them, right? And I think that's why the whole school system might not be the most effective way for actually learning, because in the school system, the mindset you're driven into is to get it done, right? I mean, if they give you a boatload of work, instead of trying to learn from it, you're going to just try to get it done, right? So they train you to work in a get it done mindset kind of way instead of an actually learning kind of way. And because of that, like all the assignments you have for math class and for science class, they're trying to find the path of least resistance to get it done. And because of that, I don't think you learn much just from purely doing school work. Obviously, you can learn a little bit, like it's inevitable, but I think following your genuine interest and just learning about it on your own and for the sake of it is a lot better. Now, I'm not saying that you have to just go and learn everything like that, but it's more of a realization that the way the system is designed might not be necessarily the best way. And just something to keep in mind. I thought it was pretty cool. So I've heard about this concept before that your state of happiness and state of fulfillment is correlated with the number of desires you have. So if you have a lot of desires, then you're not going to feel as happy because you can see the difference between your life and the life that you can be living. And because of that, you're always going to be striving, trying to achieve that ultimate life. Now, having less desires or achieving those desires can give you a state of mental peace because it takes away the desires you already had. Which is why when you achieve a goal or some goal you set out for yourself that's been a desire of yours for a long time, it gives you a state of mental peace because finally you've achieved it. Finally, the desire has been relinquished, right? So if you have so many desires, you really have two strategies to take. The first strategy is that you can keep working to achieve all the desires and then find that state of mental peace. Or you can eliminate the amount of desires you have. So it's not about that I have 10 desires, to achieve every single one. It's more about that I have 10 desires, let's make that one desire, right? Because just that alone can give you a state of mental peace. And, you know, I'm trying to reflect on these last 2 months of my life because I think the level of fulfillment I felt has been unmatched. And it's even also only when I'm at Petty doing my thing. I mean, I still feel pretty good when I'm at home, but there's something so unique about my whole experience of being there that led me to the state of fulfillment that I'm still trying to understand conceptually what really gave me that. But I think the main driver first of that was that I eliminated most of my desires and I had quite simple desires. There was a lot of time I spent reflecting about a lot of time spent just by my own journaling or just walking or just reflecting about what do I actually want. And I think just allowing yourself some time where you can just sit back and just think to yourself that what do I actually want, that can help you to eliminate desires you have because you start to see that a lot of the surface level desires you have on a day-to-day basis come from words people have said to you or expectations placed on you and thing you've consumed off media. But I think allowing yourself time alone kind of takes the sheet off and you can just see there's very few authentic desires that you have because at core, I believe there's only a few main desires you have. And, I'm not saying I'm desire free, which might be the ultimate goal in life, but there are a few desires I have, but they're quite small and central desires that are quite easy to achieve, I'd say. I'd say when I reflect on this, the desires usually fit into like these three categories. I think the first desire is work and to have meaningful work, right? I think that work can be an enjoyable thing if you can find the work that brings you real fulfillment. And a lot of people are trained to think that work is a bad thing, but you can use the money from work to enjoy the good parts of life. But really, just the work itself can be the fulfilling thing if you find the work that is the most fulfilling for you. So the first desire that I might have felt was that I want to find work that's fulfilling. The second desire is to have a big family. I think that's a desire I've always had because I think family brings you so much fulfillment and meaning in life, and I'm really excited for that stage of my life. And the third thing is just to have good health. So that means good mental health, good physical health, have good relationships in my life, everything that contributes to having good health. And because I had such simple desires and such simple ways to achieve those desires, I would say when I was there at Petty, over the last September, October, even November now, months of my life, the reason I was able to find such fulfillment in the recent weeks is because I basically like kind of in a way achieved these most of these desires, right? I have a meaningful form of work that when I work on it, my life feels purposeful. Like over exam week, like I would literally spend like maybe 5, 6, 7 hours a day working on it. Like whether I was, preparing for the next podcast or actually going out and filming the podcast or in my room editing the podcast or watching a podcast to learn from the podcast or just sitting down and thinking to myself, how can I get the podcast better? Which some people might say that's inefficient because I can just get someone to edit it for me or whatever. But I enjoy editing it myself, and obviously maybe in the future I won't be, but it's the fact that I enjoy the whole process behind it. Like I've always enjoyed working on these kind of projects, like video related projects, and building the system and like seeing it actually work out, in addition to like learning from people and everything. So I've always enjoyed working on these things. So I had a meaningful form of work. And I didn't achieve the success yet, but I don't think the success is what actually what fulfills you. Sure, it can raise your baseline for a little bit, but then it's really about slow progression over time. It's not like the ultimate success that you find will be the success that, yes, there you go, now I'm happy. But it's more just the progression of success over time. That okay, I hit 100 subscribers and 1,000 and 2,000. Like, I think that progression is what makes you happy, which is why I think that a huge jump could actually be a curse, because then everything else after that, it's kind of compared to that huge jump you felt. Anyway, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I had a form of work that was meaningful. I was making gradual progress toward methods of success that I define successful, right? I'm getting better on camera, I'm making the production better, and soon I'll be promoting it and getting more people to watch it, right? So the idea that I have meaningful work is the first one. Second one is, I said family. Obviously, I don't have my family yet. That's probably my 20s, so we'll figure that out then. But, I have like relationships that bring me meaning, right? I have people in my life that I enjoy speaking with and I enjoy doing things with. And, I go out and I do these activities every day with them, whether it's work on the podcast or wrestling. I have these things that bring me that fulfillment. And the third piece of it is that I feel like my health has been really good because I've been eating clean. I've been um had good mental health through wrestling. I had really like pretty good levels of testosterone and all these different things, and I had good sleep quality. I was sleeping at 9 o'clock every single day. Um, so because of all these reasons, I felt that my overall health and state of being was also very good at the time, which is why, you know, simplify your desires and then find a way to achieve those desires right now. And then you can just feel like every opportunity that you have in a day is not to achieve something, but more to just give your gift and to enjoy doing it through that process. All right, so those are the learnings that I've had from just pure experience over the last week. I do now want to go into 6 other learnings I've had just from reading and like learning in this podcast and things like that. So I think this will be a little bit more quick as we're going through them because they're just kind of simple ideas. We'll talk about them and then, might have a little bit more discussion about them if needed. So number one, the best diet is the elimination diet. Your diet should consist of a few essential ingredients and nothing else for your best brain performance, right? So we talked about this. I think a lot of people, again, when they're thinking about optimizing diet, they think about what kind of add that's healthy, but it's really about getting shit away, right? And I've seen people online who have designed diets where they have a few essential ingredients, where they have maybe 5 to 10 ingredients. So I've not currently implemented this in my own life, but it's an interesting concept to keep in mind because it's a mindset you can have about what can I eliminate. Like every day, think about like one thing you can eliminate, right? I'd say my diet is quite simple right now, but it still has elements of it that are not as optimal for my brain performance, right? Because, my mom will make rice or like roti or anything like that that's so high in carbs that makes my brain fog and I can feel that. And, obviously priorities will change with time. Like next summer when I'm bulking up again, like I'll be eating a lot of food. But remember, if your goal is brain for performance, you really just want to design a diet that has like 5 to 10 essential ingredients that are good for you and your mind performance. So interesting to keep in mind. So, that I'm big on like avoiding stimulation in general. And I think for one of those reasons, I've never been into caffeine. And, a lot of the people I see online, most of them enjoy caffeine. And it's always been the same. It's like, okay, well, I've never had it in my life, so it's like not anything I want. But all my friends and like they sure that they take it, whether it's a pre-workout or it's like a coffee in the morning or whatever they're using. It's always been this idea that caffeine is like good for you because it's nothing wrong with it, right? As long as you're not having sugar with it, like it's optimal for your brain performance and everything, like cool. But someone who was pretty like big on caffeine, he shared this, which I might want to share with you guys because it might be helpful, which I found it very interesting. They mentioned that quitting caffeine unlocked number one, constant energy throughout the day, zero anxiety and anxious thoughts, and mental clarity. Which, if we think about what caffeine is actually doing to you, it makes a lot of sense. So caffeine is, I'm trying to remember the word. It's like a blocker. Fuck, we learned this in bio. I should know this. Um, it's not a ligand, it's whatever. So you have these receptors in your brain that bind to adenosine. Adenosine is this molecule that, as it builds up throughout the day, it makes you more tired. When you sleep, all the adenosine is cleared, and then when you go about your day, it slowly builds up over time, which is why throughout the day, obviously, you'll get more and more tired. And then by the time it's time to go to bed, the adenosine is built up so much on your mind that you just want to go to bed, right? So adenosine kind of acts as this cycle, this tracker that makes you feel tired and awake throughout the day. What caffeine does is it goes and it binds to the receptor, but it does not activate the receptor, right? So it kind of just sits there. And because it just sits there, the adenosine is not able to bind to it. So because of that, you you feel more awake because you have the caffeine blocking the adenosine from binding. But one of the things is was with anything that kind of helps you in your performance is that you kind of get reliant on it over time. And because of that, the contrast that a lot of people feel is that okay, they feel ultra awake when they have the caffeine, but then the other moments of the day they feel more tired because their brain can contrast that, right? The same thing that I talked about with music, right? When you listen to music, those moments are elevated, but then every other moment of the day goes down, and you kind of just feel bland and unstimulated when you don't have that music or social media or whatever the stimulation might be for you. So it makes complete sense to me that quitting caffeine can actually unlock more energy throughout the day. Now, obviously, for me, I can't really feel that since I've never been on caffeine, but I'm sure for people who kind of gotten used to it over time, it can help them to be more energized throughout the day. And then the zero anxiety and anxious thoughts is an interesting one. Obviously, I've not read into the science of it, but in the mental clarity, like it's pretty cool to me, like all these. I've been reading a lot about brain fog recently just because I feel it a lot when I'm at home because of my diet and everything, and I've been trying to find ways to deal with it. So, this quitting caffeine thing, if you want to try it out for a few weeks, I think it's a pretty interesting idea. Third thing is that the idea of willpower. So we have, if you don't know what willpower is, it is the ability to kind of push through or the ability to kind of hold back. So you don't feel like doing it, like when you really want to do something, but you stop yourself from doing it. And you have a part of your brain called the AMCC that levels up every time you do something that you don't feel like doing, right? So the AMCC keeps leveling up every time you do something difficult, right? So willpower is actually a skill that you can level up over time. If you feel like you don't have much discipline or willpower to push through those difficult moments, whether it's at like a practice or it's at like whatever, you can actually improve it over time by just constantly doing things that feel sort of uncomfortable. But you have to realize that doing hard things does not necessarily make your willpower or discipline better because it's all relative, right? If you go in the gym for like 10 years, it's not going to be as hard for you as someone who is just starting to go to the gym. So for him who just started, he will feel a lot more of the effects of willpower when he is like negotiating with his mind. And that the key thing that he mentioned was that really measure the amount of negotiation your mind goes through before you push through it. Normally I've gotten quite used to the cold showers in the morning, but once in a while I just don't feel like going in, right? Like this morning, the cold shower in my home is a lot colder than the one at Petty. This is how cold it gets, so I make sure that I go as cold as possible. And this morning I was sat there for like 5 minutes. Like I really don't want to do this, right? I went through so many negotiations in your mind, but when you feel through that and you still do it, I know that experience from this morning leveled up my AMCC. But maybe on a different day at Petty, when it's just another cold day shower, sometimes it's hard, but if it's not that hard, it won't really level up your AMCC as much, right? I'd say like normally wrestling practices are hard, but they're not like you kind of get used to them over time, so they don't feel like pretty extremely hard. But when I went to practice yesterday on Sunday, it was probably the hardest practice I've ever faced, and it was just nonstop for like an hour straight, it's like live and like conditioning. It was pretty bad. But I know for a fact that at that practice, my AMCC leveled up because although I didn't have much of a choice, like I had to keep going. It's like in the match, you're going to keep pushing or not. So I know that my AMCC kind of leveled up through that, right? So, it doesn't have to be a big thing either. It could be a small thing, right? Like I don't want to pick up the trash on my floor. And I do have a ton of trash on the floor right now that I got to clean up. So it's about not feeling like doing it, but doing it anyways. That can keep leveling this up so you can improve your willpower over time and it can be easier to do hard things when you keep leveling up the skill. So this is a quick one, but eating food outside might be better than eating food inside. And occasionally I've been trying to go outside more. Actually my friend inspired me to do this because I always see him outside just chilling and I want to be just outside more, just taking breaks, just like being outside is just good for your mind. But also eating outside might be better for your blood glucose levels because apparently your light can change the way your food is metabolized, which I found very interesting. And obviously sunlight produces a lot more light than like a desk lamp here. So eating food outside, if it's like warm outside, I'm gonna try going outside more to eat. And I did last Friday on the last day of our practice at school. It was just brunch, no one else was there, and it was nice outside. So I just sat outside on my own. But apparently your blood glucose levels will be better if you eat food outside. I don't know why, but it's pretty interesting. Another quick one. So body movement and thinking are inversely related. So, I think our mind is something that's very difficult to understand and deal with, because the problem with our mind is that sometimes you're thinking a lot, sometimes you're not thinking about a lot. And, sometimes we want to go deep in thought, but we're not able to concentrate. And sometimes you're going to want to um, stop thinking so much, but our mind just keeps going, right? And one of the best things I found is that your body movement and how much you're moving around can actually control how deep in thought you actually are. So let me give you an example. Typically, when you're moving a lot, your mind will stop thinking so much, right? And usually because maybe the physical movement might be difficult, but just moving around a lot, your mind will stop thinking about shit. So for example, if you go and do like a hard practice and wrestling practice, for example, for me, my mind is moving around so much, I stop thinking about stuff. And that because of that, I gave my mind like an hour rest break. So if you ever need to stop thinking, it's not that you have to think your way to stop thinking. It's really just have to get yourself moving and doing something, because that will get your mind to stop thinking so much. But if you're really trying to concentrate and think about something deeply, typically sitting down in like one place and not moving at all will allow you to concentrate very deeply on that thing. So they're inversely related, more body movement, less thought, less body movement, more thought. So that's pretty interesting. And finally, the ultimate creativity is within you. You just have to remove all input. So obviously that there's so much to learn online. A lot of the things I'm talking about here I've learned about online, but there is something inside of you, the way your brain comprehends the world, and that can unlock such a unique sense of creativity that cannot just be found by consuming stuff from online. And the reason is because your brain thinking patterns are very different than like how a computer would process information, right? You're trying to find like a file in your computer, you probably search for like the folder, you put it in, and you organize it into all these different departments and things like that. But your mind, it's like you can look at the color of your desk, and that can remind you of a memory from when you're in fifth grade, which could remind you about something your mom said that day, which could just remind you of your grandma, right? Your your brain is able to connect all these different thoughts in such an interesting way that if you ever just watch your mind, you can realize that and find that very interesting. So the key point here is that if you just sit down and you allow your mind to just naturally do it, it will draw connections with things you've learned from like different parts of your life and different memories and different things you're thinking about, that can unlock something so creative that you can find if you look within you than just consuming input all the time. That's not to say that consuming input is bad, because a lot of the time it can be very useful and helpful, but you should also incorporate periods of your life where you just listen to your own mind, see what you're thinking about, and see how that can unlock a completely different state of creativity. But yeah, that's all I got today. Just a couple learnings from my own life experience, a couple learnings from what I found online this week. Again, I don't know how often I'll do these ones, but once in a while, if it's like the next podcast I'm recording is next Sunday and it's a Monday. So I really don't have much else to do this week. Kind of disappointing. I'm going to Shenandoah on Wednesday, so that's obviously going to give me plenty of things to do during the day. But next 2 days, I didn't have much to do. So once in a while, when I have some free time, I'll definitely hop back on. Now that most of my college apps are in, I have a lot more free time to kind of just chill. But yeah, that's where we at. Peace.